Angela at beginninggenealogist.com. Hope you're having a good day. As you know, I've been making a series of tapes, videos about utilizing census records. And so far I have looked at the census records from 1930, 1920, 1910, and 1900. And I am about to continue with some additional records in terms of looking at 19th century census records as well. But before I go any farther, I thought I would give you a few tips. And these are tips on how to make sure that you're employing the census records as thoroughly as you can. It is important that you keep some things in mind and that you utilize certain strategies. Now, as you've started to research ancestors, and it's more than likely you have one particular line you're looking at where there is an ancestor who was born in the 19th century, and you have that ancestor documented into the early 20th century. Perhaps you have that person in 1900 or 1910, maybe even as recent as 1920. Well, it's important to remember that you look at all available census records for each ancestor. Now, by that I mean if you have an ancestor who was born in the 1860s and did not pass away until the 1920s, let's say, then you want to be able to capture that person in every census year in which they can be documented. If they were born in 1862, you know that you want to find them in 1870, 1880, if you can find them in 1900, 1910, and so on. But it's also important that you think about something else as well. And I will probably create another video pertaining to this to know what all of the record sources are for census records, because some things happened differently in other states. And by that, I mean that some states, for example, took a statewide census in addition to the fact that the federal census was also, data for the federal census was also collected. So if you have an ancestor, let's say from Alabama, that was captured in the federal census, and that person you know lived between the 1860s and 1900, it's important that you also take a look and see if you can find that same ancestor or that same group of ancestors, that same family, in the 1866 state census. It's very important because there were many different things that were done on many different levels, both state and federal. Any place where the individuals, where the citizens were enumerated, you want to capture them during every census enumeration collection period in which they lived. It will always help you to be able to tell the story more easily. Another tip I want to share with you is the importance of capturing the data of everyone who was in the family group. And what I mean by family group is that I'm sure some of you have seen a census record where you have found the great-grandfather and the wife and the children, and you notice in 1910 there was someone who was listed there as a lodger. Well, it's important that you find out a little bit more. You'd make some more inquiries. Find out who that lodger was. In many cases, the lodger was someone who was very close to the family. Particularly if we're talking in communities before your family may have migrated from one state to another, and I'm of course referring to families that had left the South and had migrated to northern cities, but you're looking now at the family before the migration, and you see someone living in the household who was a lodger. In many cases, this is a person who was really an extended member of the family. This could have been an in-law. It could have been a husband of one of the adult children who was living there, or a close relative of one of the adult children in the household. And sometimes you'll find that a lodger was oftentimes an adult sibling. So it's very important. Take a close look to see who everyone in the family group was. Very, very important. Another tip that I'll share with you, and many of you do this already, some of you have heard of the Nettie rule. I think some people in Chicago refer to it by that name. When you find your ancestors on a particular page in the federal census, and the same way with any other state records as well, always pay attention to the community that surrounds the family. That community is right there on that ledger, but also take note of the pages before and after that family was found. The guideline is oftentimes recommended. Some people say 2 pages, 3 pages. I believe the Nettie rule is 5 pages before and after you find the targeted family, particularly because you're looking at the community. And it's very, very helpful because you're oftentimes going to be able to find relatives, find ancestors that way. A final tip for you, of course, is about the ages. When you find your family listed on a record, of course, we know first of all that ages are approximate. But beyond that, understand how ages were written. Obviously, for anyone who was older than 1 year old, that individual is recorded in years. But when it comes to young children, sometimes you see fractions. And understand, if you see 3/12, that means it's an infant who's only 3 months old. Sometimes you see another kind of fraction. You might find that you will see 21 out of 30. Well, that's for an infant who's less than a month old, and that newborn child is just 21 days old. So you want to pay attention, particularly again also when the census was taken. At the top of that page, usually there's the date in which that census was collected. If it is not always filled out on every single sheet, then make sure you go to the very end of that particular enumeration district when the census enumerator had to sign, and usually that individual wrote something down. This ends the enumeration of this particular district, and they sign it, and there's usually a date there if you don't see that date at the top of the page. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope this has been useful for you, but follow those tips as you're beginning to look for those ancestors. As I said, use all available census records, both state and federal, that reflect your family. Pay attention to all the individuals who are in the family group. Don't forget to look at the pages, at least 5 pages before and 5 pages after you have found your family. And of course, pay attention to the ages of young children, those who are less than 1 year old, and those who are sometimes less than 1 month old. It can help you estimate date of birth a little bit more accurately as well. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.